Always choose truth.
We ask the questions.
What is needed in the world?
Is that going to
Biz güçlü olacağız ki tüm kardeşlerimize, tüm dünyaya el uzatacağız.
He and his party have been running Turkey for 13 years, but then a stunning defeat 3 months ago. The movement President Recep Tayyip Erdogan helped create, the Justice and Development Party, also known as the AK Party, lost its majority in parliament, throwing the political system into uncertainty. That was even more remarkable given what supporters say was a long list of accomplishments. When Erdogan took over as Prime Minister in 2003, Turkey carried billions of dollars in debt to the International Monetary Fund. Since then, it's paid off the loans. The country's infrastructure needed major improvements. Since then, bridges, roads, tunnels and airports have been constructed all across the country. And symbolically, Muslim women wearing headscarves no longer have to hide. When he left his job as Prime Minister due to his party's term limits, he campaigned for the presidency last year. Erdogan got 52% of the vote and became the first popularly elected president of Turkey. Not satisfied with playing the symbolic role set out in the constitution, he immediately pushed for changes to make the job more powerful. All of those changes would have been debated by Parliament around now, but that didn't happen. The people voted his party out of power. After failing to construct a coalition government, Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoglu, who used to be Erdogan's foreign minister, was forced to admit defeat. So, President Erdogan called for new parliamentary elections in November. At the same time, there are major security challenges. Attacks by ISIL and the PKK, the Kurdistan Workers' Party, on Turkish soil, and a Turkish bombing campaign against PKK and ISIL targets in Syria and Iraq are already having political effects domestically. So how will all this play out? Why exactly did his party suffer? Will Erdogan pull off a victory in November? And either way, how is all this affecting this country so strategically important to the larger Middle East? Today on Talk to Al Jazeera, we're taking the temperature in Turkey, with regular voters on both sides, against and in support of President Erdogan and his party. Many people couldn't believe it. On June the 8th, they woke up to a new political landscape. The AK Party, which President Erdogan helped found, and with a self-described conservative democratic agenda, still the largest with 258 seats. The second largest, CHP, or Republican People's Party, which describes itself as a secular social democratic party, maintained its role as the second largest party, with 132 seats. The nationalist MHP, 80 seats. And then the big surprise, the HDP, by many described as the political home for Kurds in Turkey, got enough votes to enter parliament for the first time. 80 seats, almost 13% of the vote. 376 seats needed for a majority. No single party reached that number, and a coalition government is not going to happen. Several issues had already caused political upheaval in the country. Among them, corruption charges against 4 former ministers. The parliament, controlled by the AK Party, investigated but decided not to refer the cases to court. And then there were the demonstrations in Gezi Park in 2013, when demonstrators, angry at the government's plan to develop the area, were met by a heavy-handed police response. And later, incidents of social media being shut down by the government, something still fresh in the minds of many voters. Few, though, expected the political victory this year to go to the HDP party. Even the party's Kurdish supporters couldn't quite believe it.
Yeah, I was a supporter of the HDP. I was really surprised with 13%. Yeah, it was like on the edge.
Vahet Kaya is a lawyer practicing corporate and immigration law since 1991. He works out of this office in Istanbul. We met him in one of his favourite cafes.
Are you worried that Turkey will go back to the unstable years of coalition government after the prosperity it's enjoyed with a stable one-party government?
First term and second term was really good and did lots of things in terms of the having reforms in law and bring us more peace and social stability in the country. But third term, last 5 years, I think they lost track. And now none of any reform that European Union required from Turkey to change, and then they just try to bring some undemocratic regulations, security measures, and I don't know, maybe they have been in power over nearly 15 years. They became, I don't know how to say it.
So who was it voted for HDP apart from the Kurds who voted for HDP? Who was it?
Who was the
type of people?
Frankly, I didn't have any statistics, but I look at some suburbs, plus district of Turkey, which is rich and upper class, we can say upper market people live them. They voted for HDP, and in Kadıköy, in Ataşehir, in Bakırköy, HDP received a huge amount of votes. That means people have good wealth and good education. Turks voted for the pro-Kurdish party, which is interesting. But they want to have peace. They want to have a sort of European-style freedom, maybe Western-style democracy.
Hazal Mengi just graduated from Istanbul's Culture University, specialising in international relations. She's now pursuing a master's degree and will then look for a job. She supported the CHP, which describes itself as social democratic.
Why did you vote for the CHP in this election?
Actually, I can say lots of reasons about that. But firstly, I can say that CHP is the traditional party in Turkey, and my family decisions affected me, I think. And also my ethnic identity is also affected me. Then I can say that in Turkey there is no social democrat party like as powerful as CHP. So I vote for that reasons. And I support democracy, but when we look current situation in Turkey, we can say that there is no real democracy in Turkey because of the long term of AKP government.
And what is it about, is there a difference about the policies of the CHP and the HDP that make you choose them?
Actually, CHP changes, I think, because there are some pluralist voices in CHP, but when I look HDP or AKP, I can say that the party's representatives has same voices, and also a resolution process is so important for us, and also new constitution.
What Hazal refers to here is the constitutional changes Erdogan wants to endow the presidency with more power. According to the constitution, the president should play a neutral role in party politics. In a speech as recently as August 14th, Erdogan said, "They call on me to be impartial, but I made it clear that I won't be impartial."
When you voted in the last election, at the front of your mind when you voted was what? Was it that you don't want President Erdogan to change the constitution to become more powerful, or was it that you wanted the CHP to win? What was the motivation for the way you voted? The primary motivation?
Actually, I'm interested in movies about authoritarian leaders or something like that. And when I watch these movies, I can see Erdogan, and I'm afraid of that. If Erdogan would be a president in Turkey, it won't be like Obama, because Turkey has not enough democracy like in US. So if he took the power, he would done everything like.
And about the AKP, let me put this to you. This party, the AKP, has delivered huge economic growth to Turkey and stability. Turkey's economy has been growing. It's grown faster under Recep Tayyip Erdogan's when he was Prime Minister, and now under Ahmet Davutoglu. The economy is struggling a bit, but it's still doing reasonably well. something that the CHP never managed, in fact.
Actually, I can say that yes, maybe economy could be seen like growing, but I think that economic gap is so important. For example, I'm in middle class, maybe a little bit under the middle class, and I can say that the rich people are getting richer, and this is so important. I think some people cannot find to feed for bread or something like that, but CHP is Social Democrat Party, and it's giving importance to inequalities.
But a lot of people, conservative religious people in Turkey who were previously discriminated against, women who couldn't wear the scarf in public buildings, that sort of thing, the AKP has given them opportunities that no other party gave them.
I don't support that kind of secularism. The conservative peoples live really freely, but other peoples like Alevite people or the atheist people don't live in Turkey very well. There are lots of problems about our cases.
The criticism of Erdogan as authoritarian is rattling many of his supporters, like Rukiye Kaya. Born in the UK, she spent several years studying overseas rather than in Turkey because of the previous ban on Islamic headscarves in most universities. She came back when the ban was lifted, and she thinks many of the allegations against Erdogan are wrong or oversimplified.
Do you think your president has an authoritarian streak?
I think he's being blamed for that, but...
We know he doesn't take to criticism very well, and he doesn't like people who disagree
But
with
you
him.
have to understand, you have to look at it from his perspective, especially during the Gezi protests. He was singled out by the international media. Given the fact that he was targeted by the internal media, by the international media, as a human being, I believe that this would be the most natural reaction. I think it was a reflex that he was defensive, because all the contributions that was done in Turkey were being ignored. It was a time where we were no longer we had just closed our debt to the IMF. We were performing economically very well prior to the Gezi protests. We had just closed our debt in, I think, March to the IMF. The interest rates they were staggering over 45%, and they were pulled down to like a single digit 8.8%. So these were significant progresses that were done to Turkey. And this was not just economically speaking. I mean, infrastructurally speaking, transportation. In terms of the education, the budget allocated to the education has increased 8-fold. The student loans and bursaries handed out to students has increased by 478%. These are figures that are not receiving any international coverage.
I get the impression that you feel like you have to be defensive about voting for the AKP. Why do you feel the need to be defensive?
It's very interesting because I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I feel that when I read international news, I almost feel that there is a consensus among international news agencies to target the Justice and Development Party. I don't mean to get defensive, but unfortunately I do feel that I inclinate towards that, because when someone is singled out to a point where even the internal chamber of architects is accusing falsely that he has a golden closet in his palace,
You mean the President Recep Tayyip Erdogan?
President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is being accused of this. You tend to get a little defensive because you see how ridiculous this is. And he's also, with regards to the claims about the fact that he has a table worth hundreds of thousands of Turkish liras, he showed a video documenting how this is not true. And he's, I think, one of the words that has the highest benefit to cost ratio in the world is the word paranoia. Erdogan has been labeled as paranoid. And voila. After that, it is really brilliant. He loses credibility immediately on the international platform.
Obviously, he has this reputation
of being authoritarian. And what seems to concern his opponents is that he is not tolerant of dissent to his opinion, dissent to his views, dissent of his vision of how Turkey should be governed. And the suggestion is that in fact in this last election, so concerned were people who might once have voted for the AK Party, that the AK Party lost votes because many of its core supporters were troubled by the idea that Erdogan wanted to become more and more powerful, and so this vote was a bloody nose to him.
I think the main reason for the loss of the votes was, we could trace it back to the fact that the 4 ex-ministers were not sent to the Supreme Court, because that troubled me as well. Because I believe that if someone is a potential, is blamed for a potential crime, I do believe that they have to be judged, regardless of which party they happen to be in. Because, I mean, it's called Justice and Development Party. It should stay true to its name.
So the party, what, made a mistake there?
But if those 4 ex-ministers were sent to the Supreme Court initially, it would have probably meant, it would have probably equated to losing face. But now, I don't see there any reason for them not to be judged.
There are now 2 issues hotly debated in Turkey. One is the election in November. Will it be fair? And the other is the military and security situation. Will it affect the election? And in particular, will the HDP, the party for many Kurds, suffer as a result of the renewed conflict with the PKK?
But now, I mean, the situation's changed dramatically since the elections in June. We've now had the government, particularly on the security front. Do you think in the current environment the HDP can keep hold of that support that it got in the last election, or will people be scared about the threat of instability, scared about insecurity, and they'll switch back to the AKP? What do you think?
I think HDP going to lose some votes. Not maybe going to lose 2-3%, maybe 1.5-2%.
Because why?
Because people are scared really, and then the voters of the HDP wants peace, wants to have stability, wants to have live in the peaceful environment.
So you think increased fighting between the government and the PKK youth factions particularly, is going to badly affect the HDP if we go back to elections? They're going to lose support.
Definitely will adversely affect HDP if the fighting is going to continue like that.
For Rukiye, the fighting with the PKK is putting the HDP on the spot.
HDP, despite clear connections with PKK, has not for once condemned the attacks that are happening the bombings that are happening all across Turkey. Any modern government that allows for this type of democratization would expect a certain condemnation from a party who's just entered the parliament.
Do you think the HDP would be better off if it was more willing to criticize the PKK?
Yeah, I am not in the position to say HDP has condemned and criticized PKK a lot, because most of PKK supporters also, all of them are voted for HDP. And they were so enjoyed last 2.5-3 years, like ceasefire between the PKK and soldiers and government, Turkish government. But the leader of the HDP, Demirtas, has been announcing that the PKK has to stop the fightings, has to stop the fighting or creating some troubles. But I don't know how much is going to be success, but he really wants to stop PKK, stop this fighting.
So now there's going to be another election. Do you have any fears about the next few months? Do you have any concerns? What do you think is going to happen over the next few months?
Before the elections, for example, lots of people goes to obligatory army
Military service.
Mm-hmm. And for example, everybody afraid of that. My friends, my family members afraid of that. And
You
also,
mean friends of yours who are going to go, who
Yeah.
have to go and do military service?
Yes.
They're afraid of going, are they?
Yes.
Why are they afraid?
because the terrorist attacks, generally it goes on eastern part of Turkey, and they are really afraid of, they're afraid of to be killed.
But Hazel says there's no way she'll change her vote, despite the security problems Turkey is now facing.
Because otherwise maybe AKP will be in government again, and we know that freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of media can be attacked in Turkey again, I think.
Kemalist and secularist part of Turkey continuously denies the fact that we are a multi-ethnic, diverse society with people from all backgrounds. It is very elitist in its approach. Its past campaign, a political campaign, was that don't be a sheep, vote for CHP. How do you expect me to vote for a party that puts down the opposing view in this manner? Okay, well, I'm hearing out your views on gay rights. I'm hearing out why you hate Erdogan so much. Why don't you hear out what the Muslims think? Or, I'm not saying they're non-Muslim in nature. I'm not saying that the entire CHP and HDP voters are no, that's not my claim. My claim is why they are so against a significant portion of the country.
So, given that undeniable economic progress made under the AK Party, were you surprised and disappointed with the election?
I was. To be honest.
Disappointed, surprised or disappointed, or why those?
Not necessarily disappointed, but more surprised, I guess. I wasn't really expecting it. And this really meant that the party had to review the decisions that it's taking. Why could there be such a change on the electoral basis? Because AK Party thus far was very, very prudent in ensuring that there was a cross-class electoral base that was supporting AK Party. And now, after the final elections, I think a significant portion of the votes have shifted to HDP.
Why do you think the AK Party lost those votes, that support?
It could be because, as a nation, we favor dynamism. We would like change, perhaps.
Do you favour dynamism?
No. I do favor dynamism on certain aspects, but as a citizen who's benefited from the changes that AK Party has put forth, I would have preferred AK Party to have won the majority of the votes. But I do also believe that it was a wake-up call for AK Party, so maybe this had to be done.
In the end, many supporters of the AK Party and President Erdogan may not like the last election result. But Rukiye at least seems willing to consider that losing an election is not necessarily the end.